I woke up to the sun streaming through the curtains, the kind of morning that promised new beginnings and adventures. Today was supposed to mark the start of my honeymoon with Nathan, a trip we'd been planning for months, a trip that symbolized the beginning of our life together. Except it wasn't. As I stretched, reaching for my side of the bed, I found it empty. Nathan's absence wasn't unusual. He was often up before dawn, a habit from his days in the military. I patted across the room, the soft carpet comforting underfoot, and then I saw it. My passport, or rather, what was left of it, shredded and scattered across the kitchen counter like confetti. My heart sank. "Nathan!" My voice, usually calm and measured, was now laced with panic and disbelief. He emerged from the living room, a smug expression on his face that I hadn't seen before. "Looking for this?" he asked, gesturing towards the remnants of my passport. "Why would you do this?" I demanded, my voice trembling, not just from anger but from a deep, unsettling betrayal. He shrugged, the smugness never leaving his face. "I never planned to go with you, Marla. The trip is for me and my mother. She deserves it more than you do." The words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me speechless. This was not the man I thought I married. This was someone else, someone cruel and unrecognizable. "But why?" was all I could muster, a mix of anger, confusion, and heartbreak in my voice. "Because you're not family. Not really. My mother, she's my family. She's been with me through everything. What have you done for me, Marla? What have you done for us?" His words were like daggers, each one intended to hurt, to cut deep. And they did. In that moment, I realized the man I loved, the man I married, was a stranger. A stranger who had meticulously planned to hurt me, to exclude me from a moment that was supposed to be about us, about our future together. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. There was no love there, no remorse for what he had done, only a cold, calculating indifference. "I want you out," I said, my voice steadier now, fueled by a newfound resolve. "Out of this apartment, out of my life." Nathan laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. "You think you can get rid of me that easily? You're nothing without me, Marla, you'll see." But as he turned to leave, a spark ignited within me, a burning desire for revenge. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Nathan and his mother Evelyn had shattered my dreams, betrayed my trust, and tried to break me. But they were wrong about me. I was not going to be a victim in their twisted game. I started picking up the pieces of my passport, each fragment a reminder of the betrayal I had suffered. But as I did, I also began picking up the pieces of myself, my resilience, my strength. I would rebuild, not just my passport, but my life. And Nathan, he would regret the day he decided to cross me. This was not just about a ruined honeymoon anymore. It was about justice, about righting the wrongs that had been done to me. Nathan and Evelyn had unleashed something within me, something fierce and unyielding. They thought they had won, but this was only the first chapter of a story they hadn't anticipated. A story of revenge, of a woman scorned but not defeated. A story where I, Marla, would have the final say. As I sat in the silence of our once shared apartment, the echoes of Nathan's departure still ringing in my ears, I couldn't help but reflect on the signs I had chosen to ignore. It was as if the pieces of my shattered passport mirrored the fragments of our relationship, each piece a red flag I had naively overlooked. The first time I noticed something was off was at a company gala. Nathan, always the charming senior manager, had introduced me to his mother, Evelyn, with a sense of pride. But the warmth in his voice didn't match the coldness in her eyes as she gave me a once-over, her lips curling into a disdainful sneer. "So, you're the one," she had said, her voice dripping with unspoken criticisms. Nathan had laughed it off, squeezing my hand a little too tightly. "Don't mind her. She's protective of me," he'd whispered, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. Then there were the subtle, controlling tendencies Nathan exhibited, which I mistook for care. He'd insist on choosing my outfits for events, criticizing anything he deemed not up to the standard of his social circle. "We're a power couple, Marla. We need to look the part," he'd say, as if my own taste and autonomy were inconveniences rather than aspects of my identity. But it was during our wedding preparations that the true extent of his manipulation and his mother's influence became painfully clear. What was supposed to be our day quickly turned into Evelyn's spectacle. She wanted a grand, lavish ceremony that would be the talk of the town, dismissing my desires for a more intimate, personal celebration. Nathan, ever the dutiful son, sided with her on every decision, from the venue to the guest list, which ballooned to include people I had never even met. I thought this wedding was about us, I had argued, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice as Nathan and Evelyn pored over brochures for the most expensive venues in the city. "It is about us, darling," Nathan had said, not looking up from the glossy pages. "But my mother has been dreaming of this day since I was born. We can't disappoint her." And so, I found myself writing checks for a wedding that felt more like a royal coronation than the beginning of our marital journey. Each signature was a reminder of the power Evelyn wielded over Nathan, and by extension over me. The night before our supposed departure for what was meant to be our honeymoon, Nathan's ultimate betrayal felt like a cruel climax to the series of compromises and sacrifices I had made. As he smugly unveiled his plan to take his mother on the trip instead, citing some twisted logic of gratitude, I realized the depth of his deceit. My marriage, it seemed, was nothing more than a strategic move in a game I didn't know we were playing. But amidst the turmoil and heartbreak, a spark of defiance ignited within me. I refused to let Nathan and his mother destroy me. I had been passive for too long, mistaking Nathan's control for care, his manipulation for love, no more. As I began to plan my next steps, my resolve hardened. The evidence of Evelyn's manipulative behavior and Nathan's complicity, though accidental, was a weapon I hadn't anticipated having. It was a chance to reclaim my voice, my autonomy, and perhaps to exact a measure of revenge on those who had wronged me so deeply. "I'll need a lawyer," I muttered to myself, the words feeling like a vow. And evidence, more evidence. I started sifting through our financial statements, emails, anything that could shed light on the extent of Nathan's betrayal. It wasn't just about the ruined honeymoon anymore, it was about exposing the facade of the perfect husband and son duo. As I delved deeper, the initial shock and pain of Nathan's betrayal transformed into a steely determination. This was not just my fight. It was a stand against manipulation, against a false love that sought to control rather than cherish. Nathan and Evelyn had underestimated me, seeing me as nothing more than a pawn in their twisted game. They were wrong. I was not the same woman who had watched her dreams get shredded along with her passport. I was stronger, fueled by betrayal, but driven by a newfound resolve to fight back. And as the dawn broke on a new day, I knew one thing for sure. Nathan and Evelyn would regret the day they decided to make an enemy out of me. The days leading up to the wedding had been a battlefield, with every decision contested and every choice scrutinized. As I sat alone in the now too quiet apartment, the memories of those battles flooded back, each one a testament to the unwavering influence Evelyn held over Nathan and the spineless compliance he showed in return. I remember standing in the center of what would be our reception hall, a place more grandiose than I had ever imagined, feeling like a stranger at my own wedding. Evelyn, with her commanding presence, was directing the decorators with an iron fist, dictating every detail from the floral arrangements to the table settings. "Navy blue, not royal blue. Are you colorblind?" she snapped at a young woman arranging the centerpieces, who looked close to tears. I had wanted simple elegance, something personal and warm, but Evelyn's vision was cold, ostentatious. "Nathan, can we talk about this?" I had tried to intervene, hoping to salvage some part of the day as ours. He had simply placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze never meeting mine. "Let her have this, Marla. It's important to her." His voice was flat, resigned, as if the wedding was not about us but about appeasing his mother. "But it's our wedding," I had protested, my voice barely above a whisper, drowned out by the cacophony of Evelyn's demands. Nathan had just shrugged, a gesture that had become all too familiar, and walked away, leaving me to stand alone amidst the chaos of what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. As the wedding day approached, my excitement had turned to dread. I felt like an actor in a play, performing a role that had been scripted by someone else. The joy and love that should have been at the heart of our celebration were overshadowed by the extravagance and opulence of Evelyn's desires. The morning of the wedding was a blur of activity. As I sat in front of the mirror, getting ready, I caught a glimpse of myself. The reflection staring back at me was a bride, yes, but one whose eyes were filled with uncertainty and sadness. "You look beautiful, darling," Evelyn had said, appearing behind me. Her voice was soft, but her eyes, reflected in the mirror, held a gleam of triumph. It was as if she had won a prize, securing her son's loyalty and obedience at the cost of my happiness. The ceremony itself was a spectacle. I walked down the aisle, my arm linked with Nathan's, feeling like a pawn in a game I had lost control of. The vows we exchanged felt hollow, the words echoing in the grand space, bouncing off the walls, and the indifferent faces of the many guests I didn't know. It was during the reception that the reality of my situation became painfully clear. Evelyn, resplendent in her role as the mother of the groom, was holding court, basking in the adulation of the guests. Nathan was by her side, attentive and doting, while I was relegated to the sidelines, an accessory rather than a partner. As I watched them from a distance, a conversation between Nathan and one of his colleagues caught my attention. "She's perfect for you, man. Your mother must be thrilled," the colleague had said, clinking glasses with Nathan. Nathan had smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, she knows how to put on a show. But it's my mother who's really running the show." The words were like a slap in the face, a public acknowledgement of my diminished role in my own marriage. I realized then that I was not Nathan's partner. I was a means to an end, a way for him to maintain the facade of a perfect life dictated by his mother's ambitions. As the evening wore on, the celebration around me felt more like a funeral, mourning the death of my dreams and aspirations. The realization of Nathan's betrayal, his willingness to sacrifice our relationship on the altar of his mother's approval, was a bitter pill to swallow. But as I stood there, surrounded by the pomp and pageantry of a wedding that felt like anything but my own, a resolve began to form within me. Nathan and Evelyn had taken my voice, my agency, and my dreams, but they wouldn't take my future. I knew then that the path to reclaiming my life would be fraught with challenges, but I also knew that the first step on that path was acknowledging the truth of my situation. I was married to a man who saw me as nothing more than a pawn in his and his mother's game. But pawns, as I would soon show them, can become queens, and queens do not bow, they reign. The night before what was supposed to be the beginning of our honeymoon, the facade of our marriage crumbled entirely. Nathan's revelation of his true intentions wasn't just a shock, it was a declaration of war. He had meticulously planned this betrayal, savoring the cruelty of his deception. Sitting across from him at our dining table, a space that had once symbolized our shared life, I felt a cold detachment take over me. His words echoed in the silence, a silence that was about to be shattered. "So, you never intended to go with me at all?" I asked, my voice steady, belying the storm of emotions within. Nathan's response was devoid of remorse. "Marla, let's be realistic. My mother deserves this trip. After all she's done for us, it's the least I can do." "Us?" The word tasted bitter. "There's no us, Nathan. There never was there? It's always been you and your mother against me." He leaned back, a smug expression on his face. "You're taking this too personally. It's just a trip." "Just a trip?" I repeated, incredulous. "You destroy my passport, betray our marriage, and it's just a trip?" Nathan shrugged, as if dismissing my feelings. "You'll get over it. You always do. But this time was different. This time I wouldn't get over it." His callousness, his betrayal, it was all too clear. Nathan and Evelyn had not only underestimated me, they had ignited a fire within me, a fire that demanded justice. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said, rising from my chair. "You think you can just replace me with your mother and I'll quietly disappear?" "That was the plan," he admitted, arrogance oozing from every word. "You were a convenient choice, Marla, but convenience has its limits." His words were meant to hurt, to belittle, but they only served to strengthen my resolve. I was no longer the compliant wife, the silent partner in their twisted game. I was an adversary, and I would fight back. "I want a divorce," I declared, my voice ringing clear and strong. Nathan laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "And what will you do, Marla? You have no evidence, no grounds. You'll walk away with nothing." But he was wrong. I had the evidence of his betrayal, his deceit, and his manipulation. The recordings, the documents, the financial discrepancies I had started to uncover. Nathan had played his hand, but the game was far from over. "I have more than you think," I countered, meeting his gaze with newfound defiance. "And I will use everything in my power to expose you for what you are." Nathan's smugness faltered, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "You wouldn't dare." "I dare," I affirmed. "You and your mother have taken everything from me, but I will not let you take my dignity. I will not let you win." The conversation ended there, Nathan retreating into silence, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of his mistake. As for me, I spent the night planning, strategizing. Nathan's betrayal had shattered my heart, but it had also cleared my vision. I could see now, see the lies, the manipulation, the sheer cruelty of his actions. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, a family friend who had always been supportive. I explained the situation, sparing no detail, no matter how painful. The lawyer was sympathetic but also pragmatic. "We'll need solid evidence," he said, echoing my thoughts from the night before. "Anything you have can help build a case not just for the divorce but for any legal action we might pursue against Nathan." I assured him that I had started gathering evidence, that I was prepared to do whatever it took to expose Nathan and Evelyn's deceit. It was a daunting path, one fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil, but I was ready. As the days passed, my resolve only strengthened. Nathan's betrayal had not only broken our marriage, it had awakened a fighter in me, a woman determined to reclaim her life from the ashes of deception. This fight was not just for me. It was for every moment of joy Nathan and Evelyn had stolen, for every dream they had shattered. They thought they could discard me, erase me from their perfect little world. They were wrong. I was Marla, and I was just getting started. In the weeks following Nathan's revelation, I moved through my days with a singular focus: to dismantle the life of lies he had built at my expense. The discovery of the recordings was accidental, a forgotten feature on my phone activated during one of their many plotting sessions in our living room. Listening to their voices, Nathan and Evelyn, weaving their web of deceit, was both horrifying and galvanizing. They had not just planned to replace me on the honeymoon, but had orchestrated much of our marriage to their benefit, with little regard for me or my well-being. Armed with this evidence, I set up another meeting with my lawyer, Mr. Carter, who listened intently as the recordings played. The room was heavy with the weight of betrayal, each word from Nathan and Evelyn a testament to their manipulation. "This is good," Mr. Carter finally said, pausing the playback. "It's a clear insight into their intentions and your husband's duplicity." I nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. "There's more," I said, explaining how I had begun to notice discrepancies in our financial statements, hints of further deceit. Mr. Carter's brow furrowed. "We need to tread carefully, Marla. Financial fraud is a serious accusation, but with the right evidence, it could significantly impact the divorce proceedings and possibly lead to criminal charges against Nathan." The idea of pursuing legal action was daunting, yet the thought of Nathan facing real consequences for his actions was a balm to my wounded heart. "What do we need to do?" I asked, ready to take whatever steps necessary. "Continue gathering evidence. Bank statements, emails, anything that seems out of place. We'll also hire a forensic accountant to review your finances. It's important we build a solid case." Leaving Mr. Carter's office, I felt empowered. The path was clear, and for the first time since Nathan's betrayal, I felt a sense of control over my own life. The days that followed were a blur of activity. I pored over bank statements, credit card bills, and email exchanges, my eyes catching inconsistencies I had previously missed. Each discovery was a piece of the puzzle, revealing the extent of Nathan's financial deceit. It was during one of these late-night sessions that I stumbled upon an email that chilled me to the bone. Nathan had been embezzling funds from his company, funneling them into a secret account. The amounts were staggering, the implications clear. Nathan wasn't just a cheat, he was a criminal. With shaking hands, I forwarded the email to Mr. Carter, feeling a mix of fear and determination. This was the evidence we needed, but it also meant the stakes were higher than I had imagined. The next morning, I received a call from Mr. Carter, his voice urgent. "Marla, the email you sent me last night. We need to act on this immediately." I met him at his office, where he had already laid out a plan of action. "We'll present this evidence to the company's legal department anonymously. It's important we protect your identity for now." I agreed, understanding the need for caution. The thought of Nathan being exposed for his crimes was both terrifying and exhilarating. This was more than just a personal vendetta. It was about bringing a criminal to justice. As we prepared the evidence package, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me to this moment. Nathan and Evelyn had tried to break me, but instead, they had forged me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for herself. The day we sent the evidence to Nathan's company, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had done what was right, not just for me, but for anyone else Nathan might have harmed with his deceit. The aftermath was swift. Nathan's company launched an internal investigation, and within weeks he was fired, his reputation in tatters. The news of his embezzlement and subsequent dismissal spread quickly, leaving him and Evelyn socially ostracized. As for me, I watched from the sidelines, my heart heavy with the knowledge of the pain I had caused, yet lightened by the sense of justice served. I had awakened from the nightmare Nathan and Evelyn had created, armed with the truth and a determination to rebuild my life on my own terms. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was the author, writing my own destiny, free from the shadows of deceit. Nathan and Evelyn had underestimated me, but I had emerged from their betrayal stronger and more resilient. I was Marla, and I was just getting started. In the weeks following Nathan's dismissal, the facade of our life together crumbled, revealing the depth of his deceit. Armed with the evidence of his embezzlement, I had become an architect of his undoing, meticulously planning each move with the precision he had once used against me. The discovery of further malfeasance in Nathan's financial dealings was the final nail in the coffin. Documents hidden in a locked file on his laptop, which I accessed thanks to a forgotten password scribbled on a piece of paper, painted a damning picture. Nathan hadn't just embezzled from his company, he had defrauded several clients, siphoning funds into accounts only he controlled. As I handed these documents over to Mr. Carter, my lawyer, his reaction was solemn. "Marla, this is serious. With this evidence, Nathan could face criminal charges." "Good," I replied, my voice devoid of any satisfaction. "He deserves to face the consequences of his actions." Mr. Carter nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. "I'll contact the authorities. It's out of our hands now." The fallout was swift and severe. Within days, Nathan was arrested, his crimes laid bare for the world to see. The news outlets had a field day, painting Nathan as a modern-day swindler, a man who had lived a double life at the expense of those he had vowed to protect and serve. But amidst the chaos of Nathan's downfall, Evelyn remained defiant, her support for her son unwavering. "He's done nothing wrong," she declared to anyone who would listen, including me, when she confronted me outside the courthouse after Nathan's arraignment. "This is your doing," she hissed, her eyes burning with rage. "You've destroyed my son's life over what? Money? Revenge?" I met her gaze, my resolve steel. "No, Evelyn, I exposed Nathan for who he is. You're just too blind to see it." Evelyn's response was a venomous sneer. "You think you've won, but you're alone now, Marla. Was it worth it?" Turning away from her, I didn't bother to reply. Evelyn's words couldn't hurt me. I wasn't alone. I was free from their lies, their manipulation, free to rebuild my life on my terms. In the aftermath of Nathan's arrest, I found solace in action. I worked with the authorities, providing them with everything they needed to ensure Nathan faced justice. And with each day that passed, I felt the heavy chains of my marriage to Nathan dissolve, leaving me lighter, stronger. But even as Nathan's trial loomed, a part of me couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me here. I had loved Nathan, or at least the man I thought he was. The man who had promised to share a life with me, only to betray me in the most profound ways. Sitting in the courtroom, watching as Nathan was led in, handcuffs binding his wrists, I felt a pang of something akin to sorrow. Not for Nathan, but for the love I had lost, the trust that had been shattered. The trial was a spectacle, with evidence of Nathan's crimes presented in stark, unflinching detail. Witnesses testified to his manipulation, his greed, his utter disregard for anyone but himself. And through it all, Nathan remained stoic, his face an emotionless mask, even as his world crumbled around him. It was only when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, that I saw a crack in his facade. a flicker of fear, of realization that his actions had consequences. As Nathan was led away, sentenced to years in prison, I felt a chapter of my life close. The man I had married, the life we had shared, it was all gone, replaced by a future filled with uncertainty, but also with hope. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt the weight of the past few months lift. I had fought for justice, not just for myself, but for all of Nathan's victims. And in doing so, I had found a strength I didn't know I possessed. The road ahead would be challenging, of that I had no doubt. But for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to facing it, not as Nathan's wife, but as Marla, a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. The days following Nathan's sentencing were a whirlwind, a mix of media frenzy and quiet introspection. While the world seemed obsessed with the downfall of a man once revered in our community, I focused on rebuilding the life that had been upended by his deceit. Mr. Carter called me into his office to discuss the next steps. The atmosphere was less tense than before, a sense of closure permeating the air. "Marla, the hardest part is over," he began, his voice carrying a note of relief. "Now, we need to finalize your divorce and ensure you're protected financially." I nodded, the reality of my situation settling in. "What about the assets Nathan hid? Can we recover any of that for the victims?" Mr. Carter leaned forward, his expression serious. "We're working on it. The court's decision on Nathan's assets will play a big part. Rest assured, we'll do everything to ensure justice is served on all fronts." The divorce proceedings were expedited given Nathan's crimes. There was no contest, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and his legal team advised him to settle quickly. In a stark courtroom, devoid of the drama that had characterized Nathan's criminal trial, our marriage was dissolved. It was a simple declaration from the judge, but to me it felt like a proclamation of freedom. As I walked out, Evelyn cornered me, her presence as unnerving as ever. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat, her face twisted in anger. I stopped, facing her. "This isn't about winning or losing, Evelyn. It's about right and wrong. You might never understand that." Evelyn scoffed. "You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." "I'm not happy," I replied, truthfully. "No one wins in situations like these. I just hope one day you'll see the truth about your son." Turning away from her, I left the courthouse feeling lighter, the final tie to Nathan and his toxic influence severed. The following weeks were a time of adjustment. I secured a position at a new firm, eager to leave behind any association with Nathan and his crimes. My colleagues were supportive, offering a fresh start I desperately needed. One evening, as I sorted through the remnants of my married life, deciding what to keep and what to discard, a knock on my door startled me. It was Mr. Carter, looking more informal than I'd ever seen him. "Marla, I have some news," he said, stepping inside. I braced myself, unsure of what to expect. "What is it?" He handed me a document. "The court has finalized the division of Nathan's assets. A significant portion has been allocated to his victims, as you suggested. And," he paused, "there's a settlement for you, as his spouse who suffered due to his actions." I scanned the document, the numbers and legal jargon blurring before my eyes. "I don't want his money," I said, the idea repulsive. Mr. Carter nodded, understanding. "It's not about the money, Marla. It's about accountability. You have a chance to start anew, to use these resources for good." The idea settled slowly, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. I could use this settlement to help others, to make amends for the damage Nathan caused. In the end, I decided to donate a significant portion of the settlement to charities supporting victims of financial crimes, keeping only what I needed to secure my future. The decision brought a sense of peace, a feeling that, in some small way, I was contributing to the healing process, not just for myself, but for others affected by Nathan's actions. Life moved on. The media frenzy died down, Nathan's name becoming a cautionary tale whispered in financial circles. I rebuilt my life, step by step, finding strength in the lessons learned from the ordeal. And through it all, I discovered a resilience within myself, a determination to rise above the chaos and create a life defined not by the actions of others, but by my own choices, my own values. As I sat in my new office, looking out at the city below, I realized this chapter of my life was closed. Nathan and Evelyn were part of my past, but they would not dictate my future. I was Marla, and I had emerged from the shadows of deceit into the light of a new beginning, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and integrity. As the dust settled on the tumultuous events that had upended my life, I found myself standing on the precipice of a new beginning. The legal battles were over. Nathan was facing the consequences of his actions behind bars, and Evelyn, once a towering figure of manipulation, was now a pariah, her son's crimes casting a long shadow over her existence. Yet, the path to rebuilding was not just about moving on. It was about reflection, understanding, and ultimately, forgiveness. Not for Nathan or Evelyn, but for myself, for having been ensnared in their web of deceit. One afternoon, as I sat in my new office, the cityscape outside a testament to resilience, a familiar face appeared at my door. It was James, a colleague who'd become a friend, someone who had seen me through the darkest days. "Marla, got a minute?" he asked, his tone hesitant. "Of course, James, come in," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, fidgeting with his hands before speaking. "I heard about the settlement, and what you chose to do with it." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's admirable, Marla. Not many would have made the same choice." I offered a small smile. The decision to donate a significant portion of the settlement to victims of financial crimes had not been made lightly. "It was the right thing to do," I said simply. "Nathan's actions hurt many people. If there's a way to help them, even in a small way, then that's what I need to do." James nodded, understanding. "And what about you? How are you holding up?" The question caught me off guard, a reminder of the personal cost of the whole ordeal. "I'm getting there," I admitted. "Every day is a step forward. Some days are harder than others, but I'm determined to make the most of this second chance." James's visit was a reminder of the support system I had, the people who had stood by me when the world seemed to crumble. It was a stark contrast to the isolation that Nathan and Evelyn now faced. Rumors had reached me of Evelyn's struggles, her attempts to reach out to old friends and allies, only to be met with cold shoulders and turned backs. Her son's crimes had tainted her by association, her manipulative nature now exposed for all to see. And Nathan, once a figure of respect and authority, was now a cautionary tale, a man who had lost everything because of his greed and deceit. The reports from prison spoke of a man grappling with the reality of his actions, the lives he had ruined, including his own. In a way, their downfall was a form of justice, not just for me, but for all their victims. Yet I took no pleasure in their suffering. It was a somber reminder of the consequences of our actions, the ripples they create in the lives of others. As I continued to rebuild, focusing on my career and the new opportunities ahead, I also took time to heal. Therapy sessions became a part of my routine, a space to process the betrayal, the anger, and the loss. It was during one of these sessions that I came to a significant realization. Forgiveness was not about condoning Nathan and Evelyn's actions, but about freeing myself from the hold they had on my life. It was a difficult journey, one that required me to confront the deepest wounds and find a way to move forward. Months turned into years, and as I looked back on the journey, I saw not just the pain and the betrayal, but the growth and the strength that had emerged from the ashes. I had not only survived, I had thrived, building a life that was authentically mine. The final chapter of this saga was not written in the courtroom or the headlines, but within me. Nathan and Evelyn's legacy would forever be one of deceit and downfall, but mine would be one of resilience, compassion, and a relentless pursuit of justice. As I closed the door on this chapter of my life, I knew that the lessons learned would stay with me, guiding me as I navigated the future. I was Marla, no longer defined by the actions of others, but by my own choices, my own strength, and my own unwavering spirit. Own unwavering spirit. Own unwavering spirit. Own unwavering spirit.